Why does the Bible say that if a man grapes a woman, he has to marry her? Explain it to me like I'm 5. I'm answering your question. Hi, I'm Jeremy. I'm a deep skeptic, also a pastor. So it's kind of complicated to imagine actually talking about this with a 5-year-old. Don't worry, the answer is pretty simple. So let's just be clear. This is horrible. It should never happen. It is damaging on every conceivable level. But the answer is interesting because in the ancient world, it's kind of about protecting the woman. What a lot of people forget to keep in their minds when they're reading the Bible is that the Bible was written thousands of years ago to a completely different culture, different understandings of psychology and relationships and values. It's like when you read Tom Sawyer and you hear words that are shocking used. You aren't really surprised when you realize, oh, it was written in a time where those words were used in different ways and there were different values. And even if they still are wrong, even if it still has wrong values, it's not surprising. And you would never think that reading Tom Sawyer meant that you should use those words. So let's talk about the culture in the ancient Near East thousands of years ago. Women in that culture were viewed as property. And the most valuable part of them was their reproductive system. And when they were married, there was a bride price paid, and it was paid based on the assumption that they were virgins. Because if they weren't virgins, then that most valuable part of them was no longer valuable, because who knew whose the child would be? And if it was discovered that they weren't virgins, they were destitute. They did not have the ability to own property. They would not experience physical protection. They would end up on the street. And this wasn't something that would just happen when her parents got old and passed away and she had no one to live with. Oftentimes, women were kicked out immediately. And so there was this immediate danger of being destitute. So in the case of Grape, a man was required to marry her, which saved her from that very dangerous fate and gave her the basic provision and protections that marriage gave them in the ancient world, which are the basic provisions and protections that women have by default in the modern world. So that was a really messed up part of the culture into which the Bible was written. But when it comes to trying to understand the Bible, this is really important because you don't take cultural things from the Bible and try to map them one for one on the modern world. We don't try to reenact this ancient culture. But when you boil it down to the underlying value of protecting women, that can be applied in the modern world and should be applied with our modern understanding of psychology and trauma and all of the things that are the result of a long evolution of humanity.